let's head over to Abuja. Our second guest is in the studio to know, I believe.
Yes. Now, in tune with established patterns and character, the Southeast and South-South geopolitical zones have presented a united front against the Buhari administration's plan to establish cattle grazing communities across the country. All the governors in the two zones have taken popular positions with their people, cementing further the traditional support base of the main opposition People's Democratic Party. Why does this pushback seem so strong in the region? And to what extent would the recent National Assembly leadership polls affect the standing of President Buhari in the region? We're now being joined by Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, Executive Director, Development Specs Academy, Leadership and Governance Consultant, Life Coach, and Media Consultant. Welcome to the program, Dr. Ikechukwu.
Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, okay, it's good to see you again. I don't know whether you've been watching...
Ruben.
How are you? I don't know whether you've been watching our conversation.
I'm all right. How are things?
I'm good, good. I don't know whether you watched our conversation.
To some extent, yes.
Yes, with Ahmed Buhari. Who
yes, particularly with your last guest.
Yes, Ahmed Buhari, talking about Ruga settlements. He thinks that the governors should have done more public sensitization to educate the people, and most of the reactions are, emotional, and that, what we're dealing with is really about economic enterprise, and that we should learn to manage our diversity better in Nigeria. But we would like to have your own thoughts on Ruga settlements.
Well, the issue is not a question of sensitization. It's about kicking off a project which, even if it's good in itself, is coming at a time that the nation is so divided that even if a fly moves across within your line of vision, you declare it an airline fighter. So let's get a few things in perspective. Number one, the argument has been that, look, this is about economics and that the cattle routes have been taken over, therefore they need alternative cattle routes. We know that the trans-Saharan trade of the last 200 years, you had this trans-Saharan trade route. Does it still exist? The answer is no. And why the answer is no is that because there's a new global global economy, and emerging national economies across all the routes that have redefined the space, redefined economic value, redefined economic engagement, and even redefined both the trade itself and global trade. So individuals, communities, and lifestyles adapt to changing patterns.
Well,
Number two, when you speak of grazing areas...
Okay.
Sorry?
If you could just pause, we'll take a short break, and then we'll come back to you, and you continue with that line of thought. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We're still having a conversation with Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, who is in our Abuja studio, on the issue of the setting up of cattle colonies in parts of Nigeria. Okay? Yes, you were talking about cattle grazing.
Yep.
Please, could you continue with your comment?
Yes, first of all, that the trans-Saharan trade route changed as societies and geography of societies and economies evolved. Now, today, the cattle routes are also being overtaken by events. And if you're talking about land area for grazing, remember that about 2 years ago, Governor Ganduje of Kano State announced publicly and repeatedly that there's a part of Kano that can take practically all the headers in West Africa, that the land was fertile, it's a forest, there's water, and there's river. Nobody responded to that open invitation. In addition, if you actually know the North very well, I mean, if, for instance, you hear about Jigawa State, what occurs to you is some arid land that doesn't have much going for it. You go through Jigawa and you're shocked at the level of greenery, natural green areas, water, and all the rest of it all the year round. And if you want to talk about the part of the country where all-year farming goes on because of successful irrigation programs, it is within the North. The Lagos-Sokoto rice project, I don't know how it's going, is a result of irrigation farming, not just natural land. So there are several issues that are in place. But from the standpoint of putting the facts on the table, I'm not aware that the federal government is forcing states, at least that's the official report, that is only 12 states in the North who are interested, that will be involved, and that their lands are being freely made available to them. But I take on more serious developmental issues and issues of value. Number one, why is this such a national priority as we speak? If you say it's a business, and I'm into cattle business, it's for me to learn how to deal with it. Cattle business has evolved all over the world. Yes, the last speaker mentioned that actually it's an investment by a lot of people who are themselves not the herders. And this I know because I have friends who are northerners, very prominent Nigerians who also have massive herds of cattle. And, you know, your number of cattle actually affects the perception of your status within the traditional Fulani and some parts of northern communities. And the question I ask myself, should this still be so? In the Southeast, it used to be your bands of yam and probably your goats that determine whether you were a rich man, whether you could be taken seriously in addition to your moral character. Can I today go and announce in my place that I have 46 bands of yams and therefore I'll be taken seriously? People will laugh and say, my friend, yams are now revalued. It's either in naira or in dollars or in another form of business and all of that. So events are overtaking much of the criteria and foundations on which it rests. The second thing is that if you want to drive this business logically, from the argument they are following, there's a question of human capital development. People running all over the place. In fact, it's the misfortune of mismanaging human capital that has led to this. So for decades, you have healthy young men who carry your cattle all over the country and all over West Africa, and you're here in Abuja or in some other country, you're the big man. Where are those people going to acquire what will make them part of the 21st century? But the argument then is that, oh, if you set up the ranches or if you set up Ruga, then you're going to put up schools, you're going to do all of that. And I ask, is this the way to go for Nigeria? Is it the thing to do now that we have mostly undeveloped and criminalized youth population, and the national priority is to be debating Ruga, when after 20 years of democracy, there's really nothing to show, not in electricity, not in road construction, not in education, not in national security, not in good mentoring by leaders, and the crisis for which we will not sleep is because of Ruga. It's because somebody has cattle he wants to train, and it is in order for us to have meat. So are we so desperate for meat? Look, go back. We have templates. Am I aware of this? Of the Southeast at the time, ensure that there were no routes because cattle were brought in by train. So we must also see a direct linkage between the collapse of responsible leadership, the collapse of national infrastructure, and the increase in criminality, irresponsible leadership, and then mismanagement of our human relations. The trends are gone, and so all of these things have to happen. And then progressively, too. I mean, the Fulani man was never a nuisance all along, but you now have a new generation of mostly slightly younger people, many of them from outside Nigeria, who have a totally predatory attitude towards their environment and who don't understand the concept of the modern state.
So, Doctor,
Look at the relationship with the communities.
Essentially, what you're saying is that the government
Yes.
is putting the horse before the cart or the cow before the cart, that what should be addressed first are the foundational issues before this whole Ruga debate.
The foundational issues of national stability, yeah. Yes. And I'm not even saying they're putting the cart before the horse. I'm saying that they should remove both the cart and the horse because before you talk of riding a cart, you must have a road. You can't ride a cart on the Atlantic Ocean. The National Foundation is so liquefied that there's nothing to ride on it. Even trekking is dangerous. So it's not about they should put the cart and the horse aside and learn to swim or trek. This country has fallen apart completely. And this elite prancing, in the end, it boils down to procurement and a lot of contracts. In the name of the Fulani man, money will be eaten again. I mean, you have a National Assembly, the leader of which spoke yesterday that Nigeria has 10 million children out of school. That information was put out 12 years ago for the first time by international observers who clearly know nothing about our statistics. Meanwhile, there are close to 50 million children out of school, factually confirmed, both by our national census and school census. So, and a leaders planning national development without statistics, with the kind of allowances they get in the National Assembly, with chief executives that retire with billions as entitlement, we're not talking about development. That's why this sort of thing will become the burning issue. In a place where the in-law of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, a retired general, a man highly respected while he was in office, his in-law was kidnapped and kept for 2 years. So between him and his CSO, who are related to the man in marriage and the man himself is a village head, he could not be released for 12 months, for 2 months. And within the 2 months, the state was being raided routinely. What kind of president, what kind of nation, what kind of leadership, what kind of people are we? That the issue at the moment is whether we should have Ruga or not.
It's interesting to see, Doctor, because we do have the National Livestock Transformation Plan that I believe is chaired by the Vice President as well. And surely this is a discussion that should fall under that, and it shouldn't be a national discussion like you said. But clearly we have an issue with adopting policies from sustainable models. Clearly that is a huge issue here because we're looking into policies that are not necessarily sustainable for the Nigerian people. What would you pose as the adequate solution to this problem? Because it's clear that there's a problem. It's clear that there has to be a solution. Many solutions have been put at the forefront and put on the burner, yet we have settled for Ruga settlements as what we're speaking about today. But what would you say would have been the perfect model for Nigeria to follow with regards to this issue?
First of all, begin with statistics. Available statistics shows that Nigerians generally consume more pigs than cow. Pig comes first, followed by cow, and then goats. And the balancing is in different parts of the country. Now, if you talk about pig farming all over the country, you're looking for death because it is a forbidden entity for every Muslim. Then if you talk about goats, close to 95% of the goats are eaten in the south. If you talk about cow, so let's begin with that. What makes cow meat such a massive priority? Question number one. Number two, what you say is livestock transformation program. Poultry farmers, where do they fit into this? There are people who rear rabbits. There are people who rear quails for quail eggs. That's livestock. So when you allow a pressure group with some capacity for violence to be speaking for livestock, as if livestock is just about cows, then we're getting it all wrong. It's not part of a major global template. And you find that the bulk of expenditure on matters like this revolve around the preambles and infrastructure and not real livestock. The Fulani man trekking all over the place, I don't know why they never get tired. He's not the one getting out of this. It is big men here and in other places that are having a ball at everybody's expense. So my take on this is quite simple. The entire Ruga idea, look, Lamido, as governor of Jigawa State, banned grazing, openly announcing that if you saw, they called it, they called it Lamido's gift to the Jigawa citizen. If you saw any goat or cow roaming anywhere, please, you are authorized by me to kill and barbecue it. That's a northern state. So the issue on the table is to find steps that will lead to actual elimination of this free roaming, for the simple reason that whereas Mietiala and maybe those interfacing with the government actually are concerned about the survival and sustainability of their business and would want to interface peacefully with their host communities, you now have a much larger population of free actors who fluctuate between cattle rearing and kidnapping and all forms of banditry. So the federal government should come out clearly and indicate on two counts state governments that want to have a formally constituted program of the type they are talking about, that these are the states, this is their free decision, and this is how it's going to work, and that nobody will be drawn into it. Number two, states that do not want grazing in their area should say so. That you created a grazing route in the 60s during the Civil War.
Well, okay.
So that route must remain.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but we must thank you very much for coming to the morning show. Thank you very much indeed.